because the next elections something may happen like happened in Delhi in the state elections. You see, all the anti-BJP parties may gang up. Maybe after that they will not understand each other well enough to form a government together, but at any rate they will prevent the BJP
the
from
thing is,
coming to power.
the enemy is already working on that.
Yeah.
You can see it going on right now.
Mhm.
It's just that sometimes you think to yourself, are the BJP, are the Hindus aware of what's going on? Because they get lazy.
Mhm.
Once they get power,
Yes.
sometimes it can backfire.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're more able to do something where they're not in power because they're getting things together, getting
Right.
people together, everybody's standing on the edge. But there's a problem with Hindus is that when they get power, that can actually be their downfall.
Mhm.
We saw it with the recent, years ago with the BJP. They got too
Yes.
excited. They thought that's it. We've in. Everybody was lazing around. You know, Hindus have got this habit of Bollywood and cricket type of behaviour.
Yes, something
And then
should
they fell.
happen.
And everybody went into depression. Because remember, most Hindus,
Mhm.
all the Hindus are suffering from some sort of depression.
Mhm.
So, you know, you think to yourself, now they're in a much more powerful position. And they've got every advantage they need. They could turn
Yes.
things around within probably a year or two. On the
Mhm.
ideological side,
Yeah.
they could put everything in. But they still don't seem to catch it on. And even if you talk to the Hindu activists and people, they're not even aware of the kind of things you're talking about.
Right. You see, a problem is that those who might pressure the BJP into pursuing pro-Hindu policies themselves don't know what they want.
Yeah.
You see, and here particularly I talk about the RSS. You see, of course there is a pro-Hindu pressure being exerted by the RSS on Modi. But, you know, they think about things like declaring a Hindu Rashtra.
Yeah.
You know, symbolic issues.
Symbols, yeah.
Or like, you know, prohibition of cow slaughter, you know, that may be a sensitive issue to Hindus. Okay, fine. You know, you can do something about that. Nevertheless, the really consequential issues are not being addressed, partly because the RSS itself is not sufficiently aware of the importance of those.
I mean, you can ask any Hindus who want to go on about we need a Hindu Rashtra and everything. When you ask them what it is, they can never define it. So these are just becoming like empty slogans, like
Right.
in Animal Farm, the sheep.
Just now, I've been sent an article by Tapan Ghosh, an ex-RSS worker who defected, who set up his own network in West Bengal to defend the Hindus against the encroaching and ever more numerous Muslims. Now, he addresses the ideological backbone of the RSS BJP, namely the doctrine of integral humanism, coined by Dindayal Upadhyay in about 1960. And you see, he really shows that that book already gave in way too much to the secularists. It avoids the word Hindu. It always talks about nationhood, about the soul of the nation, the chiti as he calls it. Now you see, those are concepts typical of Western nationalism, 19th century, and they are meant in this context to do away as much as possible with the embarrassing concept Hindu. Also in the book, the word dharma is used a few times, but of dharma it is said explicitly that it is in the service of chiti, that, you know, the nation is most important, and dharma, well, that's a handy instrument, but not more than that. Well, you see, I think he has things upside down. So yeah, nations are fairly important. It is important to defend India against Pakistan, against barbarism. But then again, as an Indian guru told me, well, you see, many Western yogis and so on, they attach too much importance to India. They Indianize their home, they wear Indian clothes and so on. Oh, he says, India will also go. India is not that important. Yoga is important, but India is not so important. And so, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, especially as a foreigner. You see, some Hindus might suspect me of ulterior motives of being a CIA agent.
I've heard
or
that
so.
many times. Are you a CIA agent? You look the CIA.
Well,
Do you have your iCard with you?
well, so far the CIA hasn't given me any money. But maybe I am secretly doing their bidding, who knows?
No, I mean, yeah, they're very into conspiracy theories. You can see that happening all the time.
Yeah.
And then they start catching the conspiracy theories of other people as well. And then you think to yourself, this is the reason why they don't have a kind of ideological direction.
So it is very important now that we concentrate the minds of the public on a real Hindu alternative. And for that we don't have to go too much to the Hindu reformers, to Swami Vivekananda, for example, who is immensely popular, who of course had his merits, but who is not the last word really.
Yeah, true.
So we have to go back to Hindu tradition because that has...
Because the trouble is, a lot of these Hindus also define themselves as monotheist. There's another thing you see quite often, they'll be kind of trying to prove they're monotheist to the monotheists. And the monotheists then laugh at them, think, no you're not. You must become a real monotheist.
And nowadays you have the same phenomenon regarding, what is called political correctness.
Yeah.
You saw this in the California textbook affair, where Hindus try to insinuate this message that ancient Vedic society was feminist.
Yeah.
That women had equal rights, of course different rights, but still equal. And the enemy side did not buy that. They were not convinced. So if you want to get away with that kind of message, then at least study it carefully and try to make it convincing. But so the psychology behind it is simply, they see that political correctness as a very powerful influence, so they want to be on the safe side. They want to please the powerful.
Why do they always end up in that situation? Because one, you see Hindus in India very apologetic about being Hindu. Yeah, and I'm talking about, you got one side which secularists, they got a problem, so they're more extreme. They don't even want to be associated with Hindu issues and that. And then you got the Hindus themselves, who are pro-Hindu, that they're very apologetic. This is my interaction with a lot of Indian Hindus. They're very apologetic, and you think, why? Never could understand. I mean, I'm born and brought up in Britain. Always been proud of being Hindu. I've had no issues, I've always stood my ground. But you think these Indians in India, you think, what they're apologetic about it? What's happened that has made them in that kind of situation? Because you think, with all these Hindu organizations and that, just saying, oh, you should be proud to be Hindu, there should be a bit more to that. It should be in the kind of character and personalities.
Yeah, you should give them reasons to be proud. Now, if you study Hindu history, there are many reasons to be proud. In the Vedas, for example, even taking a fairly secular scholarly approach, treating the Vedas simply as very good poetry, there you have to notice that, at least they had the achievement of preserving their traditions very well, of learning them by heart, of setting apart a class in society that concentrated just on this work. So you see, that is an achievement. If we can read the Vedas today, if they have not been lost but have been preserved orally for 4,000 or so years, it is because a class of Hindus has achieved this, has worked for it.
And the other depression I always see around is this myth about we were slaves for 1,000 years. I mean, it doesn't make any sense anyway. How can you be slaves for 1,000 years to
and exist?
Yeah, and exist and come out of it existing. Especially when you're talking about Islamic forces.
I mean, how long were the blacks of America, or blacks in general,
200 years or so?
Yeah, 200 years. And they have barely come out with any remnants of their culture in any way or form.
Yes, whereas Hindus have preserved the essentials at any rate. So what happened was that, of course, many parts of India at one point or another were free, and Hindu culture continued. Then under the Sultanate, of course, the Islamic regime tried to impose Islam. Even then, of course, they had to take a lot of resistance into account, so they couldn't just have it their way. Then under the Mughals, you get a compromise. You see, Akbar was a Muslim, but he was first of all a ruler. And so he wanted his empire to flourish. And he thought that, instead of wasting your energy in these endless wars, let's do it in such a way that Hindus are sufficiently happy, not entirely happy, but at least sufficiently satisfied not to start rebellions
And then they started again soon afterwards.
Yes, and then of course when Aurangzeb turned the clock back, then immediately Hindus rose up in revolt.
Yeah, so how comes they're not like that now? I mean, first of all, they don't even know that. I mean, only now they're starting to find out about the history. And we do know there's a lot of reasons why. But you think Hindus themselves, these Hindu organizations and that, at least they would, try to say, look, this is what our history is. But even they don't know. They're the ones actually repeating a lot of these myths.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's created that kind of psychological defeatism. It's kind of spread in so many kind of ways that you think maybe that's what the reason is why they're so apologetic and so, like always moaning and crying, look, we're finished. And
yes, what is missing is a focal point around which Hindus can rally. And so the RSS claims to be that focal point, but it is not.
No.
I mean, in RSS bookshops you find a lot of, little brochures full of self-praise.
Yes.
The RSS, the vanguard of national renaissance and things like that.
The thing is,
but they are not.
There's an RSS shop in North England, Midlands somewhere, Leicester, and they've got a lot of books in there. So we found the Voice of India books there. So I asked the guy, I go, have you ever read these books? They're brilliant. He goes, no, I never read them. Never. I go, no, but you should read them. This is what you should be reading.
Yeah.
They've never read them, and then you thought, all right, then now it starts to make sense a bit.
Well, you see, one thing I've often heard from RSS people when you present them with a book is, could you not shorten this book to a little brochure?
Yeah.
Now, you see, even though, well, I think in my own thoughts about it, nevertheless, it might reflect the mentality of a very large number of people who don't like reading too much. Now, for them, fortunately, we now have the internet. Everything can be compressed to any size you want. Messages can be passed on orally. You have these webinars and so on. And so, for the present situation, you see, no matter how it came about, but you see, right now you have the situation that people don't want to make too much intellectual effort. Well, still you can convey the message. Similarly in film, for instance, you see this medium has hardly been used to raise consciousness. But there are so many historical episodes that contain very good film material.
Yeah, I know.
Like, for example, the Battle of Bahraich.
Yeah.
You see, this was against the nephew of Mahmud Ghaznavi. And he was going strong, but a number of Hindu kings, including Raja Bhoja, saw the need to get together to form an alliance, and they managed to defeat Ghaznavi. So there you have, first of all, a happy end.
Yeah. I mean, this.
You have the story of Hindus getting together. You have the colorful figure of Raja Bhoja. I mean, you have everything for a very good movie.
Yeah. There's plenty of material. I mean, they've got probably more material than any other country.
Yes.
Because you're talking about roughly 800 years of warfare. It's like when we see all other pagan civilizations, they got destroyed. Maybe Japanese and a bit here and there. But India took it full force.
Yes.
And you think, coming out of that and surviving, that is a big achievement. It's a great achievement, but you think at the same time they got a lot of the traditions preserved, and a lot of those traditions and philosophies are influencing the world at the same time. You think that's a great achievement. How come these Hindus can't think in that type of way? But they'd be sitting around all depressed.
Well, you see, a very clumsy attempt to cheer up is inventing all these stories about ancient Indians had space travel and nuclear weapons and so on. You see, it is totally unnecessary to invent all these funny stories when you have real history that has enough to be proud of.
Yeah, of course. That's very true.
It is very true, but they seem to be more inclined to the famous comics of Indian history,
Amar Chitra Katha.
That level of Indian history is what seems to be more in tune with them. Is there any other way apart from that you see them reforming themselves? I mean, is there any way that there is a possibility or there's hope in the future generations to see?
Oh yes, you see the present generation of young Hindus, I don't know all of them, of course, but you know, those few that I have seen, you know, give me a lot of hope, because you see, they're more competent, they're more worldly wise, and many of them, not all of them, but many of them are still somehow very articulately pro-Hindu.
And is that also, many of these Hindus are not part of the main groups like the RSS and that? Because I come across a lot of Hindus who are quite sharp and articulate. They're usually not part of the Sangh or anything. They seem to be outside the Sangh. You wrote an article about it as well. I mean, we ourselves are outside the Sangh.
Yeah, in the past, of course, it was either to be in the Sangh or to be isolated and not have any connections at all. Whereas now you can easily form platforms on the internet with all kinds of disconnected people and still exert an influence and work in a certain direction. So there, you know, the RSS is becoming less important, and independent Hindu initiatives are becoming more important.
Because even in London, there's so many activists or Hindu thinkers or people who are into it. I mean, there is RSS people as well. They're quite different. You get all different types. But there's a lot who are not part of those kind of organizations and all independent, and it's growing quite big.
Yes, and ultimately the effect will be on the RSS itself.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And then also because Hinduism is getting popular, because there's a lot of people becoming Hindus. So you're seeing a lot of non-Indian Hindus also coming on the scene, and also they're voicing Hindu issues. A lot of them are creative. They're coming all different types, you know, from music, arts, all types of different types of people. They're bringing a different kind of Hinduism in. And you know, they're not going to carry a lot of these problems like what Indians might have. So they see Hinduism as a clear thing, and they won't have those issues. So that kind of is helping as well. There's kind of a revival going on, and so probably we're going to see something very positive coming that direction.
And so, you know, to return to the subject of real history, you know, you have very powerful creations by Hindu civilization in linguistics, for example, which they invented from scratch. And when you study Indo-European linguistics in the 19th and 20th century, you see that a lot of innovations there come about when some scholar or other has just freshly studied the Indian linguists. You see, then that, you know, brings into an idea, and so he transposes their ideas to this new situation of Indo-European linguistics, and then something fruitful emerges. Similarly in mathematics, India has been very important. So you see, in some fields more than in others, but certainly you see India has contributed mightily. So people can be proud of that rather than invent some funny things.